Good morning, Modi ji. My name is Vidyesh. I live in Mumbai and I run a small software company. As Indians, we have seen this major crisis in front of us. Uh, it's a disaster situation, but there is a quicker solution from which we can bring ourselves out of this problem. What we have seen is that oxygen cylinders are being transported from the manufacturing centers to closer to hospitals and towns and cities. Unfortunately, oxygen is a very heavy liquid. The weight of a cylinder itself is about 60 kilos. It is classified as unportable. And then the weight of oxygen, liquid oxygen inside that cylinder is just about 20 kilos. So we see we have, because this oxygen is highly compressed, it's compressed at about 800 times. That's why these cylinders have to be very strong and thus very heavy. This puts enormous pressure on our logistics network, trains, planes, ships, etc. Also, COVID is not the problem. The lung problem that COVID patients undergo is not something that will go away with 1 day or 2 day of oxygen supply. The oxygen requirement of a COVID patient is nearly infinite. I'm saying this from my own experience. My father-in-law had 50% lung damage. He lives in Ranchi, and his oxygen requirement that happened in the month of November. His oxygen requirement was 35 days of continuous oxygen, and the flow rate which doctors had to maintain was between 8 liters per minute to almost 40 liters per minute. So this tells us, so after 35 days he started recovering, and then his rehabilitation happened at home. He is still under rehabilitation, but he is no more dependent on oxygen. The kind of deaths and devastation we have seen in this country in the last week tells us that the problem lies. COVID patients don't require enormous medical care. The solution lies in providing them oxygen. However, the problem is that oxygen requirement is infinite. The solutions that we are seeing that India is following and most Western countries followed is to supply oxygen to the patient. However, the oxygen plants are located in far-flung areas of the country. It is simply not possible to arrange those logistics. Even we are seeing this, our Air Force working day and night, and our railways working day and night. Our road transport is operational. But what happens is there is an enormous delay in carrying those extremely heavy steel tanks from production places to consumption places. So my proposal here is that we have to flip the architecture and solve the problem upside down. Why I'm proposing this and what do I mean by flipping the architecture? So why I'm proposing this? Because the oxygen requirement of a COVID patient is infinite. Let us say we have 1 lakh people in this country who need oxygen. Our infrastructure will not be able to provide those 1 lakh people, or maybe even more, 2 lakh people, that much of oxygen for a month. It's not like COVID patient is gasping for air just for several hours, and once he gets air he is happy and he goes home. It's not like that. COVID patient, anyone who comes to the hospital, anyone who needs oxygen has almost suffered more than 30% lung damage. In critical patients, the lung damage could be as bad as 50% or 60%. For such patients, it is not possible to heal his lung. I mean, there is a COVID does enormous damage to our lungs, in the sense that our alveoli simply are not able to transport. The diffusion of gases basically stops at the alveoli level. Healing of lung is an extremely slow process, based on what we have seen in other countries and my own experience in the family. My father-in-law's lung is still not improved by more than 5% in the last 4 or 5 months. So healing of lung is a gradual recuperation process. It's a long drawn out process. What COVID patients need today is air. They all want only one thing, that is air. Nobody is dying because his CT scan was not done, because his COVID test was not done, or because he needs blood or anything or medicines. People are dying for lack of air, and air is simply for lack of oxygen, and oxygen is simply not available in plenty amounts, and it is not possible to provide oxygen to our people. The reason is that there are multiple variants of COVID which will come in the future. Our vaccine pipeline is not very robust till now, and my assumption is that even if the vaccine pipeline becomes more robust, inoculating 130 crore people within a year, I'm seeing this as a couple of years stretching into 2 years, realistically speaking. And this is the nature of the problem which we have in our hands. It's nobody's fault. We simply are a very social country, and people were locked up in their homes for a year. Everybody had to go out, and once we went out, nothing happened. COVID loves religion, COVID loves democracy, COVID loves people who are a little callous about themselves, and then COVID hits back. So I will not say it is the fault of our people. I will not say it's the fault of government. It's a not proper understanding of the serious devastation that was about to happen to us, and that is where we are here. So my solution is that we have to flip the architecture, which means instead of supplying oxygen to COVID patients all over the country, which is a massive exercise, we have to move the patients closer to oxygen production factories and oxygen production units. Most of these units are situated in steel belts like Jharkhand, Odisha, and industrialized zones like Raigad, Chhattisgarh, and those places, Rajasthan, even Haryana, Kerala. So the solution is that we have to set up a kind of a pipeline, a kind of an infrastructure where patients can be moved from Delhi or any other place to an oxygen manufacturing center. And I have made a presentation which details this plan. I have tried to work out all the boundary cases, all the gray areas, and I'm trying to show how this plan will work and how this plan can help us come out of this crisis. If implemented properly, within 2 weeks, we will be out of the crisis. Everybody will be relaxed, and then we can start our plan B, which is to vaccination, strengthening our hospital infrastructure, and various things. Various things will change in this country, I'm hoping, after we get a control of this crisis. So so this is the first picture I will share, which is the overall plan. In this plan, as you can see in the picture, the patients are sleeping in camps. They are being attended by one of their relatives, which is the primary attendant who is taking care of the patient's needs, and doctors. In this is a quickly drawn out picture, so doctors would also be there, as well as administrative officials would also be there. The O2 big tank you are seeing is actually the tank coming directly from the plant. Uh, you could see smaller or regular size oxygen cylinders which are directly connected to the O2 plant. This is optional. You might not have this direct connection, but the central idea is that these cylinders can be transported very easily, like within 5 minutes, from the manufacturing plant to this camp. I'm assuming these camps are open camps, which is, I mean, they're covered, but they're open. So the airflow in these camps is very good, in the sense that these camps themselves don't degenerate into COVID hotspots. These camps are located in oxygen manufacturing centers just beside the centers, and a camp. So our country has about 800 oxygen manufacturing facilities, and the net manufacturing capacity of our country is about 7,000 metric tons. I have done a bit of maths, and it tells us that one plant is able to manufacture 500 to 1,000 cylinders per day. Not manufacture, but manufacture oxygen that goes in those cylinders. So the idea is that we will have 500 to 1,000 people resting in those camps who will be properly on oxygen for several weeks, and the relatives will be attending these camps. Now several questions might come: how do we transport these people? So what we are seeing in Delhi is that people are moving in ambulances for the whole day. There is no ambulance shortage, and there is no private vehicle shortage. Relatives are sitting with their near and dear ones in the car, and they are moving around from one hospital to another for the whole day and not getting oxygen. Because oxygen plants are more or less distributed all over the country, transporting the patient from the city to a camp, at max it will be 500 to 800 kilometer away from his city, and this is a distance an ambulance can easily cover in one day. Our highways are mostly empty these days with not much traffic, so I'm not seeing a logistics congestion of any type on our highways. People will be free. The camps will be set up in a manner where a helpline is there, and the state administration, the local administration, as well as volunteers, doctors, nurses, everyone is there in those camps. And people are resting, they are receiving oxygen. Once they are receiving oxygen, the crisis is now controllable. Obviously, a COVID patient will have various requirements. From my own experience, the medical requirement of a COVID patient is not that enormous. It is there, but it is not enormous. Why? Because not many medicines are available. The basic medicines are available in most of the places. So these camps can also have access to medicines. Most of our oxygen manufacturing facilities are in industrial zones of the country. Usually, an industrial zone has a very nicely planned, better planned than metros cities, and these are well managed cities like Jamshedpur, Rourkela, etc. These are very nicely managed cities. So the logistics of medical supplies, food supplies, etc., is more or less for 500 to 1,000 to 2,000 people. This logistic is very manageable. Then we have the civilian administration, which will assist us in overseeing these camps. So these camps will be no worse than, let us say, a flood camp, or let us say an eye camp. The degree of logistics required in this camp would not be way worse than what we have experienced. Like, NCC camps, NSS camps, they have organized these camps in the past, and when we were in school we also used to go to these camps to help the poor people. So this logistics can be managed in a way which is very manageable. The real reason, as I mentioned, why we want to flip the architecture is that the COVID patient's oxygen requirement is infinite. A COVID patient, from my own experience, who is gasping for air. His lung is damaged to a large extent. Okay, that is why he's now wanting supplemental oxygen. This essentially means, and lung is a very nasty organ. It doesn't repair itself just based on medicines. It is a worst organ in our body, and that is why so many people have died globally. It is way worse than any organ in our body. So the lung healing is hardly 5% to 10% per year. Okay, most COVID patients who come back from hospital, they spend months and months and months. They can't do any hard job in their home. They cannot go to office. They cannot climb up a flight of stairs. The best that they can do is sit on their sofa and do a bit of yoga, watch TV, read newspaper. But anything beyond that will be too much to ask from them. So coming back to our solution, these patients will require enormous oxygen. That enormous oxygen cannot be provided, cannot be flown into our cities from the oxygen manufacturing units. And when coronavirus broke out in Wuhan last year, the Chinese also had camps. Of course, at that time, nobody knew that oxygen would be the primary thing required. So these camps were mostly rehabilitation centers to make them COVID free. However, our camps have to go to the next level where we have to give them oxygen and station them for like a month. In this situation, we have to take the help of all the stakeholders. The primary stakeholder would be the state government, the host state government, which will be the which will basically receive those incoming patients. And with the coordination of center, the state government, our bureaucracy, and the oxygen manufacturing facilities, our volunteers, this problem can be very beautifully solved. Also, one more reason why I'm proposing this solution is that the influx of COVID patients is not going to stop even if we somehow take care of the COVID crisis in the crisis that we have in our hand right now. Even if we manage this crisis in the next 2 weeks, this is a long battle. We have multiple variants of COVID coming in. A couple of days ago, I heard there is some other variant coming from Tanzania. And which variant is going to do what kind of damage, we don't know. So once we set up these camps is not like an overnight camp. These camps will remain operational for a couple of years. Also, as our vaccination progresses, we could keep these camps and dismantle them only when we know 100% that our hospital infrastructure is back up in the game. And if you see carefully what we see in TVs and newspapers, it is only the crisis which is being shown is the crisis of the cities. What about the crisis happening in the villages? Patients are dying very quietly. Every day we hear this guy died, that guy died. They didn't even go to hospital. Why? Because there is a lack of awareness. Secondly, there is a lack of infrastructure. Small towns just don't have enough oxygen. They just don't have enough doctors. So a large part of our country is undergoing silent death. And the only deaths we are seeing is happening is the country which the country is aware of is deaths happening in Delhi or Bangalore or Mumbai. But India is way more bigger than that, or Surat, you see. So this is a scalable problem. It's a countrywide problem. It's a scalable problem. And we cannot say that, okay, people were responsible or politicians. It's a problem we have. It's not a problem India created. We have a problem at our hands and we have to fix it. We have to solve it. So scalable problem cannot be solved by a non-scalable solution. Our hospital infrastructure just doesn't have that kind of beds. Our doctors and nurses are extremely fatigued. A lot of people, my doctor, which was treating my father-in-law just a couple of days ago, he was suffering from COVID and he is now resting. So there is an enormous stress, and COVID is testing all the aspects of our society. It is testing our unity. It is testing our ability to collaborate. It is testing our finances. It is testing our industrial capacity. It is testing our ability to maintain discipline. It is testing everything. You see, humans had not imagined that such a crisis will unfold. Even in the World War, we could say that in the World War these kind of things got tested, and similar thing is playing out right now. So to reiterate what I said, we have to have a scalable solution to the scalable problem. And the scalable solution obviously is to vaccinate. That will happen at a certain pace. But at the same time, keep those people oxygenated. Let not anyone die because he's running out of oxygen. And why is he running out of oxygen? Because these oxygen tanks are damn heavy. They cannot be transported. And another type of crisis is now happening, which is pretty not a good picture. That is, this oxygen black marketing has started to happen in the towns and cities. First of all, a guy who gets a tank of oxygen is an extremely lucky guy. And the cylinder, which used to cost about 2,000 rupees, is now costing 30,000 rupees. So what is happening is these black marketers are flourishing. So what is happening is the government is making all the effort in supplying oxygen to the towns and cities, but the real guy who's profiting is the oxygen local oxygen supplier. We have seen WhatsApp groups where tons of phone numbers are there, and either they don't have oxygen, or if someone gets his lucky, he has to pay a lot of money. So it is putting a lot of pressure on the finances. Worst part is that our people do not understand, neither does our administration understand, that this oxygen requirement, it's not like you get one cylinder of oxygen and you are relieved and you're happy. It's not like that. The picture is way more intense. This oxygen requirement is nearly infinite, to put it very simply. My father-in-law's oxygen requirement used to fluctuate from, he started from 8 liter per minute. First week it was 12. Then his situation worsened and it went up to 30. After giving him oxygen for 30 for a couple of, he stayed in hospital for 30 days, 35 days. So there were a couple of days where his requirement was even 30 liters per minute, and then it slowed down back to 8, back to 4, back to 2, and then again 8, then again 12, then again 8, and this is how it happens. The good part here is that besides oxygen, the patient doesn't ask for much. He will be asking for antibiotics, maybe remdesivir, maybe. If you have it, you give it. If you don't have it, that's fine. Tocilizumab, maybe. Even if you don't have these things, the patient can still survive. So, okay, I have made this, I've already spoken a lot. Major points I have already covered. So, I am attaching a slide here, a presentation here. So another point is that patients who are carrying these oxygen cylinders to their homes will stand a chance of extremely poor outcome, extremely poor prognosis. Because today they have oxygen, they will run out of oxygen in 2 days. Then what? Once again, someone else, the middleman, will make a ton of money. You will be doing all the hard work, but that hard work isn't getting translated into saving lives. Secondly, the hospitals are also playing safe now. The hospitals don't want to take any risk in their hands, so they are not admitting patients. Another problem that I foresee is that big hospitals could evict poor patients, the patients who are occupying a bed and who are probably not able to pay that kind of a cost will be given an early discharge, and the rich patient will take the place. We have already started seeing glimpses of such things which are emerging here and there. This kind of thing will only worsen the crisis. A lot of poor people will die who could have been saved. And don't forget, it is the poor people who have been battered the most. Why? Because they had to go out for jobs and they had to be present because of not extremely high awareness. They lowered their guards, they did not wear masks properly, and they have to suffer. People who are doing jobs like IT jobs, they are better off because they are stationed in their homes, their awareness level was high, and they are more or less fine. It is only the person who had to go out to work in our industries, in our factories, in our sabzi mandis. They are the people who suffered the most, and they are the ones who have to be saved. So, coming back to our idea, so this slide tells us that COVID disease damage to lungs. So now we see that a lot of people die from COVID. So what really happens is the COVID patient's heart beats at a very high rate, and this happens because there is a kind of a traffic jam in our lungs because of clotting. Our alveoli is not able to transition the gases, take oxygen and give carbon dioxide. That process is not happening at the rate at which it is supposed to happen because of lung damage. So what happens is there is a kind of a traffic jam in the lung. The lungs become plasticky, they become hard, not the lung but the alveoli. So the heart is pumping, so the brain is not getting oxygen, deprived. The brain asks the heart to pump even faster. Once the heart starts pumping faster, it sends enough blood to the lung, but the lung doesn't give back enough oxygen, so it keeps beating even faster. The end result is that patients slowly progress towards a cardiac arrest. And because lung is not healing, COVID, if lungs were to heal in 4 or 5 days, you would not be seeing this much of global deaths. Lung is a nasty organ, it takes years and years to heal. I know people, a couple of people who had lung damages in the bird flu, that was 4 5 years ago, and they are still carrying oxygen cylinders. Those people are not many, so we don't know, but I have heard of those people, such people. So lung is a nasty organ. It will not repair itself, it will not heal itself that fast, and we have to rehabilitate our people so that a gradual transition happens. And then obviously, depending on how much damage they have suffered, they might have to station themselves in their homes and recover slowly. So moral of the story is that if oxygen is not supplied to a COVID patient, infinite amount of oxygen is not supplied, he will gradually progress towards a cardiac arrest, and we will lose that person. Whether we lose that person in one day or we lose it in a 1 month, that loss will happen. So the solution is oxygen camps, as I already proposed. So these camps, so I'm basically reading out my slide. The core concept is now we are maybe now you understand the core concept. So these are Shamiana covered camps. Each camp will be holding about 500 to 1000 patients, and they will be located close to the plants. The cost of oxygen transport from the manufacturing plant to the camp is very low, and the time of transport is ultra low. It is like 5 minutes. And this will require collaboration of our members of our society. Administrative overhead of these camps will not be intense. It will be as overhead as much as you see in flood camp or I camp or any kind of disaster camps. It will not be very high. Access to amenities is manageable. Let's leave the access to food, medicine, etc. to the attendant of the patient. So I'm assuming the patient along with one capable attendant will be going to the camp for a 1 month rehabilitation. And then you have basic facilities in the camp, like you could be having portable toilets near the camp, you could be having electric fans in the camp to ward away the heat, and you could be having basically some kind of a food supply. I'm pretty sure those logistics, our capable bureaucracy and capable people, volunteers, we are pretty good in doing these things, so we can manage it. Now from a simple Google search, I have come to know that we have about 800 oxygen manufacturing facilities in our country, and these facilities are manufacturing 100 to 500 cylinders per day. The manufacturing capabilities of this factory is scalable. It's not like factories are operating as per 100% of their potential, because the real bottleneck is in transport. So if that bottleneck is reduced or cut out, then the factories will be able to manufacture more oxygen, right? So yeah, and because of yeah, so this is the thing. Next we have, what are the features of these camps. First is, these camps are organized with a helpline. Every time a patient is in crisis, he will give a phone call to the camp, and the camp manager will actually give a token to the patient. The camps are very manageable distances. Sometimes we think that camps are far flung areas. That is not the correct picture. Camps are mostly located in city zones. They are located in industrialized zones. They are not located in a no man's island. And because our highways are empty, we can quickly move patients from cities to these camps. It won't take so much of time, and we are already deploying air force planes. That means we can imagine hundreds of people sitting inside a plane, or not 100, let's say 50 people along with their attendants, and carrying a small oxygen cylinder, something that weighs less than, let's say, 20 kilos, and stationed in that plane. The plane flies them to a camp if the camp is far away. Within 2 hours, he will be to a nearest town, and then he will be sitting in an ambulance. The ambulance infrastructure, incidentally, is not bad. It is there, and not just ambulance. We could have private cars as well. You see, private taxis. It's not such a difficult thing for patient to sit comfortably in taxi, carry a cylinder with him, and one attendant with him. So that logistic is not impossible. Another thing is that a COVID patient, and that's a good thing, the COVID patient does not die just because he does not have access to oxygen cylinder in 3-4 hours. He has a surviving time in his hand, 6 to 8 hours, couple of days sometimes before he dies. So so the requirement to be continuously oxygenated is not that intense. We could have some major some smaller hiccups in the middle of transport, but again it is doable. We will not lose the patient. So once, and this will be done by volunteers in a non-profit manner. The government can put in their efforts, the state government can put in their efforts. Okay, so here is a bit of math regarding our oxygen infrastructure. So India produces 7,000 metric tons of uh, oxygen, liquid oxygen per day. That means 1 metric ton is 1,000 kilos. So 7,000 kilos of oxygen is being produced. And from a simple Google search, an oxygen cylinder carries about 20 kilo of oxygen for a 5.5 feet cylinder. The cylinder itself is very heavy. It weighs about 60 to 80 kilos. That makes it extremely unportable. So based on that and a little bit of math, our conclusion is that India produces about 350,000 such cylinders of oxygen per day. And okay, so, and what is our patient requirement? What is the need? How much is oxygen required by our people? So assuming there are 5,000 deaths happening per day, we can say there are 5,000 critical patients in the country. And I will not restrict it to 5,000. So this is just one thing. Let us say we have 500 patients who need oxygen in 200 towns and cities of our country. And here I'm assuming COVID has not spread to villages. And I'm also assuming we have 200 towns and cities. So we have 1 lakh patient. And for the sake of safety, let's make it double. So there are 2 lakh patient in our country who need oxygen 24 hours for a month. So, and a little bit of math tells us that one patient will consume one big tank of oxygen, one big steel tank of oxygen. So essentially our requirement is 2 lakh steel tank of oxygen per day against our installed capacity of 3.5 lakh cylinder production all over the country. That means hospitals will also get spare capacity, and hospitals will be able to take care of those extremely ill patients who have to be given oxygen at a much higher rate with the help of machines like BiPAPs, non-invasive ventilator or invasive ventilator. So camps might not have these machines. The camps will be a regular place to receive oxygen. If you remember in the picture we saw in Delhi, there was a Sikh camp where they were providing oxygen. I don't know what is their oxygen intake, where they're getting these oxygen from and how much they can sustain and how scalable they are. I'm pretty sure they're not very scalable. So here these camps will be a way more scalable solution because the government will be there in the picture. The entire administration will be there in the picture. Okay, now we should also have a look at the virus situation. So I'm assuming that the virus is here to stay. That means the camps will be needed for a year or two until we see the end of crisis. Vaccination is little far away. So the idea is to start with one camp. We could start with a camp which is closest to our oxygen manufacturing facility, and total factories is nearly about 800. 2 to 500 patients are there in every camp. That means the load is distributed. It's not like one camp is having 1 lakh patients. That situation will never happen. That means the load on the administration is a very manageable load. China had also set up these camps a year ago, but they were not oxygenated camps, they were regular camps. Then once you have these camps which are supplying oxygen to our people in cylinders, we could slowly do a direct plumbing and piping of these camps to the main storage tank of the oxygen, which is a part of the production facility. That way the little bit of transport and logistics required in the local area, that will also go away. uh, and yeah, obviously even after putting those patients in camp, some of those patients will transition to a worse phase, they might have a negative outcome. The solution is to have doctors in place, and the solution is to, then in that case the patients will have to go to a proper hospital wherein if their condition worsens. But again, the assumption here is that 90% of the patients will not arrive at such a situation. Okay. Okay, so based on some of the things that WhatsApp, a lot of WhatsApp forwards are coming these days, there is another crisis, a slow crisis, which could become big, is that patients are not returning the oxygen cylinders in time. Oxygen cylinder is become like an asset, and the family of a patient who got his hands on the cylinder is simply keeping those cylinders at home. So what happens if a lot of patients start doing it? The pressure will shift from our transport network to availability of cylinders. And when cylinders, we start running out of cylinders just because people keep those cylinders as a protective measure, as an asset in their home, we cannot manufacture so many cylinders. Neither we can fly in so many cylinders from other countries. These cylinders will also take, I mean, it will be way slower to manufacture these cylinders than to produce oxygen. So, and it will be nearly impossible to track them. Who has kept the cylinder in which town, which village, we don't know. So the idea is not to make every patient and every family an acquirer of cylinder. Rather, the idea is to give them service, and a robust service. Second problem is that the beds could be occupied illegally. And from illegally, I mean there could be a rich patient who suddenly goes into a panic, but his situation is not bad. So what happens is that the rich patient simply goes and occupies a bed. Every hospital that I know of in this country, big or small, does not have more than 100, 200 capacity, bed capacity, even the larger hospitals. And that means the seats are limited. And once the seats are limited, those seats will start going at a premium. Once things start going at a premium, that means the middle class and the poor class will simply be cut out. Uh, and This will give rise to law and order problems. And just yesterday I saw a video, some law and order problem broke out. This could become a major crisis. So we have to cut the problem at the early stage, solve it in a scalable manner. Also, the cylinders are now black marketed, which means a 2000 rupees cylinder is going for 30,000 rupees. That means the patients are now enormously drained out of their finances. A patient will have to go into a debt. He will need extreme support from his near and dear ones if he has to save himself. Such a structure on a massive scale does not exist in our country, because this oxygen cylinder, he will not need one cylinder but 30, 40 cylinders. How is the patient going to manage, and for how long will he manage? So the end result is that the family members just give up. Once you give up, the patient will slowly progress to a demise that could have been saved. So of course, this is the overall plan. Now obviously this plan will have some gray areas. A few of the gray areas I could imagine. One is that there could be an electric failure in the plant. So again, this is not a big worry, because oxygen cylinders are there as backups, which means the electricity could be restored with the help of local administration. And that means the oxygen cylinders will always be there as a backup for like 3 hours, 4 hours, 5 hours, until the plants are up and running. Second thing is that there could be a machinery failure, oxygen generating machinery failure itself at the plant. How can we solve it? We can set up camps near only those factories which have redundancies, multiple oxygen generating machines. So if there is a collapse of one or two machines, there are other machines that can pull up. This is how we can start. Third problem that I could imagine is that there are too many people arriving in these camps, and then there is a law and order crisis because everyone wants to get admitted to this camp, and there is a non-availability of beds, and administration will have to ward off those people, and then there will be another type of a problem. So the solution to this is to manage these camps efficiently with helpline numbers, and every time a patient or his relative wants to come to the camp, he has to get a token and a confirmed seat, and then the patient will arrive at the camp. Everything will be managed like you arrive in a hotel, and things will be taken care. And obviously there will be a law and order system in place which will maintain discipline, law and order. I'm assuming our administration people are pretty good in managing these issues. There is a sanitation issue that could also come up, so we will have to have makeshift toilets. State administration can help us here. Water, the plants, I'm assuming the plants could provide water. Food, the attendants will manage that. Because these plants are located in good cities, the food problem can be taken care. Then there is another problem of spread of COVID within the camp. What does this mean? Uh, because we are assuming there are 500 to 1000 people in the camp, there could be COVID spread. But again, I'm ruling this out because these are broadly open air camps. That means it's not possible to for the COVID to spread within the camp. Okay, so here we come and see the cost benefit analysis. So because these are Shamiana camps, like it's like a wedding Shamiana camp, these camps can be put up overnight. So the cost to set up a camp, I'm assuming it's less than 1 crore rupees. The number of patients that can be serviced in one camp is about 500. And the oxygen cost at a fair price is about 2000 rupees per cylinder, which will last one day. Let us assume that patient also needs medical cost, that is about 3000 rupees. Transport cost back and forth in ambulances, let us say the patient will have to be carried in a regular ambulance or a taxi. Let us say that cost is about 20,000 rupees to and fro, and I'm assuming like patient is traveling pretty long distance, 800 kilometers. It can be done in this amount. And the expected time of stay of the patient is 30 days. That means after doing all the maths, the patient is spending about 5,000 rupees per day. So his billing is about 1,50,000 for his entire stay. And let us double it for the sake of safety. So that is about 3 lakh rupees. And if government wants it, then you can make them eligible for insurance also. So for 3 lakh rupees, we are able to save one life. Of course, it's not a small amount, but I'm pretty sure governments can apply themselves a little bit here and bring the cost down further. Contrast this to a situation where hospitals are charging, I don't know how much, and oxygen cylinders are available. One cylinder is costing 30,000 rupees. So the situation is not very good. I'll also tell you that when my father-in-law was stationed in the hospital for 30 days, our entire medical bill was 6 lakh rupees, 6 to 6.5 lakh rupees. That is the cost of doctor visit, cost of ICU, cost of ward, cost of oxygen, cost of medical, cost of food, all that inclusive. It cost him 6 lakh rupees, and that was a pretty decent hospital. So our calculation is that the cost of being recovering in a camp should be way less than that. That means it is manageable, it is accessible by our people. That brings us to our final slide. Conclusion is that it is a very solvable problem with a change of strategy. We could transition out of this crisis with our existing infrastructure. There is no need to fly oxygen from other countries or remote destinations. We have to fly out or shift out the patients instead. We can take help from the army, but I think army will not be required. The patients could be transported to the camps, and they could be carrying mini cylinders with them. again with one assistant, again very doable. uh, and I'm also assuming, because our plants are scattered all over the country, there will not be a requirement to fly the patient. uh, the patient could be transported through road transport, still doable. And also another finding is that the oxygen production capacity of a plant can be increased by deploying more staff. We still have spare capacities, manufacturing capacities in our plants. Our plants are not running up to their full potential because the cylinders themselves are not available. That means the capacity of these plants can be increased, which means hospitals will not come under pressure. Our infra they also need oxygen, so they will not come under pressure. It will be a low cost solution. And once we transition out of this crisis after a year or 2 year, we can dismantle these camps. Also, the camps should not have any state boundaries. People from one state should be able to go to another state freely, no restrictions. And this will be as per our Atmanirbhar line of thinking. So this is the overall presentation. If we can mobilize our people, our support system, our infrastructure, this is a very very doable and very solvable problem, also a very scalable one, and it could help us for the next couple of years transitioning out of this crisis. Thanks a lot for watching. Thanks a lot for your time. It was a long presentation, but this is really the first video I made. So please give a thought, and yeah, cheers.